Henry Ford went over to Ferrari to try and buy the company. He was rebuffed, so he figured, well, I'll smoke him off. So he said, well, we'll build our own car. It started off with the design basically coming out of Detroit. There were a couple of Englishmen there that had worked on race cars in England, Len Bailey and Chuck Mountain, and they assigned an Englishman to be head of the program. So Len Bailey did most of the design work on the car, and the body work was done in styling. They built a full-size fiberglass body, shipped it over to England, and a place called Specialized Moldings made female molds and body parts. Well, in the meantime, the chassis was started by the founder of Lola Cars, Eric Broadley. He put a small block Ford in this rear engine coupe that he built, and the thing looked quite promising. So Ford sent me over to help them stick a different engine in it. They had a prototype engine of the engine they were going to run at Indy. So we put it in the car and drove it down in the pouring down rain down to Goodwood and put Bruce McLaren in it and did a few laps, and the thing looked very promising. And so the thing wouldn't run all that quick in certain corners, so we said, well, let's try the fuel injection. So it took the carburetors off and bolted Stewart's fuel injection on it, and took it out, and the thing would starve out real easily, so we couldn't figure out what was wrong. But what happened when they built the cars over there, they didn't have self-sealing rubber bags in it. They were like dry tanks. They just butter up the joints and put a bunch of splodge, as they call it, in the joint to keep the fuel from leaking. And they had a transfer tube across from one side tank to the other. Well, the thing was so restricted, it wouldn't pick up enough fuel to run the fuel injector. So I said, well, maybe we can help that. So I took a gallon can and a couple of hoses, and we filled the can up and bolted me in the passenger side. And had one hose feeding the pump and the other to the bypass, and got the thing to work real well. And I was kind of flopping around on the right side, and McLaren thought that was real funny, you know, going around. In fact, he was all bolted in solid. But from there, the car looked promising, so Ford decided to go ahead with the program, and they hauled a couple more people over from Detroit. They did a lot of engineering, design, and shipped out the basic tub to a place called Abbey Panels, who did the thing in steel. And we had a small block Fords in the thing, and originally they had an Indy prototype engine in the two cars they took to Le Mans, and they ran out of brakes and transmissions, but they proved to be very quick. So from then on, they had a few more disappointments, and Ford decided to give the program to Carroll Shelby, who at the time we were doing pretty well with the Cobra cars that we'd developed. And so we built 2 or 3 prototype cars from the chassis they sent over, and we won Daytona and Sebring and a few other races. And then about that time, Jim Hall was starting to do real well with his operation. He got the big block Chevy aluminum block, and Ford said, well, we're not going to be able to compete with that. So they decided to put 427 in it. So we built 2 or 3 cars with the NASCAR engines, and we won Daytona and Sebring, and then took it to Le Mans, and we got lucky there. We were the first 3 cars across the finish line. And
what year was that?
This was 65.
And who
66. Well, we had.
And who were the drivers?
Oh, we had Mario Andretti and Bruce McLaren and Denny Hume and Foyt and Gurney.
Never heard of them.
Yeah, quite a few well-known drivers.
We went over there ill-prepared, for God's sake.
So the Deuce figured he had the field pretty well covered, so we won that year. And then the next year, they built a thing called a J car, which was the first car with aluminum honeycomb tub that had kind of followed the experiment that McLaren had done on their Formula One car. Well, we built the first car, and it was really a dog. They took it to Le Mans testing and couldn't hit their hat with it. So they brought it back.
Wait a minute. After your success, why was this new car such a dog? Why wasn't it?
Well, this was a new concept. Rather than a steel frame, they were going to develop this honeycomb car. Well, it wasn't that successful anyway. they brought it out to us at Shelby's, and they were trying a new 2-speed transmission, which proved to be the conquering, or the big project that Jim Hall had done. And anyway, we were testing the car at Riverside, and near as I can tell, the diff locked up and went over the bank, and Miles was killed. And it's a sad situation, but we learned an awful lot about how to build honeycomb cars. So we built 3 more prototypes with the 427s, and we ran pretty well at Sebring and Daytona, and then we took it to Le Mans, and we won that again with a 67 car. And then we went back in 68 with another 427, and we won that. So all in all, Ford decided he had to feel pretty well handled, so he gave up.
Well, you've certainly proven the point. My God, it was 3 incredible, successful years, that's for sure. Anybody want to comment particularly on anything? Jim, you have any questions?